Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Her Story Online Summit, Day 3. The Her Story Online Summit is a platform that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache. I'm the founder and the global curator of the Her Story Circle movement. And I'm really honored to be joining you today, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. To begin with, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations people who are joining us from around the world. Over the next few days, we will dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of remarkable women. These are stories of courage, resilience, creativity, and leadership. Stories that remind us that when women rise, communities and nations rise with them. This summit is more than just a series of talks. It's a global circle, a space for inspiration, connection, and transformation. Together, we will share knowledge, ignite conversations, and plant seeds of change. So I invite you to go and grab a cup of coffee, settle in, open your heart, and allow yourself to be inspired by the incredible journeys that we will hear today. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters and every story has the power to change the world. With that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Michelle Smith. Michelle Smith is a licensed online therapist in Florida. She's dedicated to guiding clients through their healing with compassion and authenticity. Her trauma-informed, eccentric, and client-centered approach integrates various therapy modalities: clinical hypnosis, intensive therapy, couples therapy, and group therapy to support clients in navigating the complexities of grief, trauma, and anxiety. She is already one of our tribe. I have spoken to her before on the Her Story Online podcast. Welcome back, Michelle. The
Thank you
stage
so
is
much for having
yours.
me. It's so great to see you again.
Fantastic. The stage is yours, Michelle.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so grateful to be here and to talk more about my story and how I'm able to support clients. It's truly a privilege to be able to help folks rewire their subconscious brains through the work that I do. And I do not take that privilege lightly. Just to share a little bit about myself, I am, as Gertrude had shared, I am a licensed online therapist and I am able to support folks in Florida, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, and Oregon. And my focus of my clinical work is to really help people understand how has their past impacted their ability to thrive in the present, right? So we always have these experiences. We are kind of made up from the experiences that we've gone through as a human. And so we create these different types of responses and belief systems and navigate the world with this lens, if you will. It's almost like wearing a pair of sunglasses, and we tend to see everything through this lens. And as we've navigated adversity or trauma or perhaps grief or different circumstances of that lens, we sometimes can get skewed perspectives that make us stuck in old patterns or challenges of that sort. So when we feel incapable of changing that, how do we work with the subconscious brain? And the subconscious brain is kind of 90% of our brain, this area that dictates our day to day and feels so automatic to us. So talk therapy can be great to kind of help with that conscious brain, but when we feel like that's not enough, that's where I'm able to come in and help my clients really rewire those patterns and understand, number one, why do I respond this way? Where has that come from? And then how can I install perhaps more helpful, perhaps more productive belief systems, ways of thinking, right? We are how we perceive things. And so through my therapy practice, I do get a chance to really see the humanity in folks and understand their stories. And that's why I love being a part of the Her Story podcast, as well as this online summit, because I truly believe that people's stories, when you share a story, you lessen that burden, you lessen that emotional impact. Grief shared is lessening that grief, and a joy shared is joy multiplied. And so I get the chance to be able to walk alongside my clients through that journey and, understand each step of how those brain patterns were created, wired, and then support them with different types of treatment modalities that can help you create a new brain. Your brain is always growing and evolving. We have something called neuroplasticity, which basically means that your brain is always regenerating. We're always creating new patterns, new connections. So why not use that for an opportunity to thrive and to get out of survival mode? If you are somebody who's experienced trauma, you don't need to learn how to survive. You now need to learn how to thrive, how to be able to live and feel joy and feel things that perhaps in the past you learned were threatening or unsafe. So how do we do that? There's a lot of ways to do that, but that's where this therapy work can come in. I work with clients utilizing different techniques such as clinical hypnosis, which allows me to understand your needs and provide helpful suggestions to the subconscious brain to begin to start a new pattern. I also like to utilize things like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, reprocessing therapy, where perhaps you've had some traumatic experiences. We can go in and actually rewire those connections and store those memories where they need to be. Instead of the amygdala, which is kind of our fear-based response, it actually is able to go where other memories would go in hippocampus. And perhaps you think differently about those after you go through this type of therapy. I also work with families, I work with couples. Relationships are so important to our lives, our humanity. We are social beings, and that's why we are born needing connection, needing attachment to other humans. So relationships are the core of healing many times, and so I love being able to help couples understand conflict cycles and why are you getting stuck in these, and where how does that attach to belief systems, and supporting them with true tools to be able to have healthy repairs, communicate emotionally and vulnerably, feel seen and heard by their partners, and utilize some of those subconscious rewirings in group settings as well. I also make a very important point to be able to provide group therapy to my clients, because perhaps you feel lonely and not connected to a greater community. Unfortunately, that's something that our world has really struggled with, especially post pandemic, right? We have so many connections, but those connections sometimes can also make us feel isolated. So how do I make meaningful connections? Group therapy is an opportunity to do that, where you're in a safe, comfortable environment and you're able to talk about your story. And I have different types of groups, perhaps around trauma, perhaps around relationship loss, or if you're going through grief or transitions in life. And so just being able to find the right type of support that you need is such a great opportunity for healing. So being able to kind of talk through that and rewire your brain is something that takes a lot of work. And of course, it is doable to do on your own. Anything is possible, because if we have that belief system, then we can move forward with that. But if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you would like a compassionate, supportive person to, guide along that process with you and help you through. There's really this non-linear process of healing where we're up, we're down, and we kind of feel like we're on this roller coaster, and it can feel very overwhelming as you're navigating that. So it is truly a privilege to be able to do the work that I do. And I'm so grateful to be able to share with it today with you guys about that. So that's a little bit about my practice, and to share a little bit about my personal story as well. Why have I wanted to become a therapist? Of course, we're all humans. And one of the reasons that I became a therapist in the first place was because of trauma and grief that I've gone through personally, losing my father at a young age when I was still really in those formative years, understanding who am I, and now who am I without this parent figure that was so impactful in my life. I was fresh in graduate school, 23 years old, didn't really know who I was or what I was doing. But that was such an impactful moment for me to understand how the brain can be resilient through trauma, through adversity. And I look back at that time period as such a significant trajectory to creating who I am today as a clinician, to creating the connection that I have to other people, and the ability to really understand and sit in the emotion with folks. That is such a privilege. So I'm very grateful to be able to do that. And in our society today, we have so many challenges with just being able to sit with the discomfort, right? I mean, you look around, we have all kinds of avoidance everywhere. Just drive down the street, you can go and just disconnect from really what's going on internally, emotionally, right? So I think that it's important to be able to teach and encourage your brain that something may feel discomforting, it may not feel good or positive in the moment, but you can be with that. And in fact, moving through that will allow you to perhaps create the meaning that you need, perhaps create a different understanding, a different legacy around your trauma, or someone you've lost that you've loved, or a transition in life that perhaps you really didn't want to go through, but I do have to radically accept. So being able to utilize all of those different strengths and struggles and humanness with my clients, I think is what makes me the therapist that I am today. And it is truly an honor to be able to watch somebody's strength kind of grow week after week, day after day in a therapeutic setting. Perhaps these sparks of aliveness coming back in them, and being able to call that out and say, are you seeing how wonderful you truly are? I always talk with clients about kind of just stripping away the things that got stuck, the beliefs, it's almost like peeling back an onion. We kind of have to get back to our true core, which is love and connection and senses of belonging and community. And to do that, it takes incredible courage, incredible bravery. And it is not something that many folks are really interested in doing many times, because it is hard work. So it is an honor to be able to see that with my clients and to be able to utilize that in the way that I show up with them. How can I practice what I preach? How can I be the best therapist, but also woman, mother, partner that I can be? I really take a lot of the work that I do into all of these facets of my life. And I do try to also share some of my own humanity, which is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful to be here today on the online summit. So thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, Michelle. Wow, what a journey you've been on, starting with your own personal experience and realizing that you needed help. You needed to support other people who are going through these traumatic experiences. Now, you talk about rewiring the subconscious brain patterns. In plain language, what does that mean? And what changes can people expect to notice first?
That's a great question. So to make it very simple, it's changing our automatic responses that perhaps do not fit with the future you that you're trying to create through a therapy or healing journey, whatever that looks like. So I'm recognizing perhaps I don't like the way I respond here. This feels stuck in old patterns, even though I know that I'm no longer in this environment that was threatening or unhelpful or not supportive. I'm still responding in that way. Through this work, we can actually target that and we can change that. We can understand, we can process that. And sometimes that means being able to feel through things that when your body was in survival mode, it was disconnected from because it was protecting you. And so we have to thank our body for the work that it does, the work that happens without our conscious thought. But also we have to be brave enough to say, this doesn't fit anymore. This is now more heavy to carry than helpful to carry to the future. So that's what it looks like as far as what it can feel differently. I always talk to clients about when your belief systems change, you recognize everything changes. And so the way that you're thinking about similar stressors may change. You may recognize I used to get so caught up in this, but now I feel like I can breathe. I feel like I can release. I feel like I'm responding differently. I'm thinking about this differently. So it can be anything from it's less stressful to manage, or I'm thinking about it in a more productive and helpful way, or I'm feeling more confident in myself. It really aligns with the client's treatment goals. And we target that through your individual treatment plan and work together to meet those needs.
Fantastic. Wow. Now, which therapeutic modalities do you use to access and shift the subconscious patterns? And how do you decide what's right for each client?
That's a great question. It is a collaborative process in a therapeutic setting, right? So I always talk about I have all these tools in my toolbox, and, I want to tailor what the client needs, where they're at, what their needs are. When it comes to rewiring those patterns, a lot of the times we have to go deeper than just a talk therapy type dynamic. Talk therapy is very helpful because it allows clients to be seen, it allows clients to be heard, and it does start changing those patterns, but perhaps it moves a little slower than if you're somebody who's experienced trauma or intense grief. Sometimes those can be so deeply rooted that it feels like we have to go in and kind of really take out the roots of this, right? So if that's the case, then we may want to utilize some of these modalities, such as clinical hypnosis, where I am able to get clients into a trance, relaxed state, and then start feeding some of those suggestions that the client has suggested and the belief systems that they're aligned with into rewiring that. EMDR and somatic therapies are others as well, where we're connecting the mind and the body. And so we're going in utilizing different types of modalities like bilateral stimulation, where we're really triggering the right and the left brain. We're creating this bridge between emotion and logic with those types of modalities. And clients see a lot of change in their thinking from those.
Wow. Very complex. Now, can you walk us through a typical session structure
Sure.
from intake to goal setting to measuring the progress? When the goal is deeper, when the goal is a deeper subconscious change.
Yes. So typically that first session where I'm meeting with a client is going to be where I'm going to be getting your history. I'm going to be doing some history taking. I'm going to be doing some rapport building, and I'm going to be asking you those questions as far as how would you know that you got what you needed out of this, right? If you could wake up tomorrow and, I don't have a magic wand, but I always say if I had a magic wand and I could wave it and I could say, okay, you wake up tomorrow and everything would be different, how would you know that was different, right? Would you be thinking differently? Would you be feeling differently? Would you be connecting with your partner more? So I'm really getting that specifics about what that means to that client, right? And I'm using that to guide our specific treatment goals. So perhaps we kind of identify some of those together. We can talk about what modalities they're interested in. Typically, stabilization is a big part before any of these modalities are completed. So we're building rapport. We're teaching you strategies to manage day-to-day stressors, perhaps mindfulness techniques, perhaps somatic therapies, perhaps understanding some of the roots of those before we really go in and kind of change it fully. So that is the process. And then as far as checking in, typically I'll do, treatment plan check-ins or updates with clients at, different times throughout their treatment progress. So I'll say, hey, what do you think is going well? What do you think can be altered? What goals do we really need to hone in on right now? And do we need to add new goals? And so that process happens every couple months or perhaps every couple weeks. It depends on the client's needs. And then
Right.
we're making sure that we're aligned with what they need every single moment.
Mm. Oh, it's pretty complex. Now,
Yeah.
many people fear that old memories or beliefs are fixed.
Mm.
What common myth about the subconscious have you loved debunking?
Oh, that's a good one, right?
Mhm.
That memories can be false memories, or
Mhm.
memories can come out of these processes that are not true. And I think
Yeah.
that that's why it's very important to do these types of works with trained clinicians who have that understanding that I'm utilizing what the client is bringing to me. I'm not feeding them, memories that they don't have. And also, if you have blockages of memory, you can still do some of these modalities. So it's not
Mhm.
necessary. Sometimes trauma does block us from certain things. It's not necessary to remember every single moment of your past to be
Yeah.
able to rewire these, which is a great thing too.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
So, what role do the body and nervous system play in this work? And how do you help clients to regulate during or after intensive sessions?
That's a great question. So, before and after care is really pivotal, especially when we are going into deeper subconscious work. And typically,
Mm.
I'm talking to clients about what creates safety for them, what
Right.
feels safe, right? Because safety is so much more than just physical safety. It's a feeling internally. It's something that we can kind of bring up, we can download, and we can kind of bring up as needed. So, I'm
Mhm.
doing a lot of what we call resourcing with clients, and I'm asking those
Mhm.
questions, and we're downloading different strategies. So perhaps I'm giving you a visualization around your safe place in your mind, and we can kind of target that and bring that up through these processes. Or I'm helping you understand, okay, these activities bring me pleasure, and I can do these to kind of re-regulate when I'm feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated. So I'm really helping the clients understand that may not be something that they ever really thought about before therapy,
Right.
right?
Oh, wow. You really dig deep. This is deep work.
Oh,
Now, you did your own grief journey,
yes.
and how did this inform the way that you support clients who are stuck in long-standing patterns related to loss or trauma?
It's been about 10 years now since my father has passed, and now that I
Mhm.
look at the relationship with your grief shifts over time, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't say this in the beginning, but I think now I'm very grateful for the timing of that loss and the experience of that loss, because it allowed me to connect to my humanness and pain in a way that I'm seeing with my clients,
Right.
right? So I think that that is significant, and the ability to recognize when you need help, the ability to recognize my role as a support means getting my own support and taking care of myself, right? So that really resonated through this experience for me, and I see that as a way to have longevity in this career, because as you said, this is deep stuff.
Yeah.
This is tough, right? To be able to witness people's pain in a way, and as well with the work that you do. So I'm very grateful for it now, but I think that it allowed me to really experience firsthand how trauma changes, how grief changes, how that relationship can change, and how the
Mhm.
intentionality is necessary for that, right?
Wow. So, accountability is a theme in your practice.
Yes.
How do you balance compassion with firm coaching clients sometimes who need to recreate new patterns?
That's a great question, right? One of my old supervisors always told me, Michelle, sometimes you got to challenge people because if not, you could just be a friend that they could talk to. They didn't need to pay you for therapy. And that's always resonated with me. So I'm not fearful to help my clients call out things that maybe they're not seeing, but also doing that in an empathic and compassionate way, right? Being curious is a big part of that. So I
Mm,
might say something like, I'm noticing you're saying this, but I'm also hearing this. How does that align with this belief system that we've targeted? Or does that go back to something in childhood? Or could this kind of piece together here? So I'm really just taking a lot of the information that they're sharing and putting them in these categories, and I'm helping them kind of highlight perhaps some of those areas that need to be targeted.
that's just fantastic. Wow, your work is so deep. I just don't know how you do it.
Thank you. It's a
So
privilege. It is.
so for those listeners who are over 50, who
Yes.
are reinventing themselves, what's one powerful subconscious shift that could unlock confidence and momentum?
That's a great question. So we have to find what makes us tick, what's pleasurable, what's important,
Mm,
what makes us feel a spark of passion. And as your life goes on, that changes, right? Who
yeah,
you were earlier in your life probably is not the same person as you get older, as you understand yourself more. So we're kind of constantly in this process of rediscovery and curiosity of our inner world. And so a lot of the
mhm,
times I'll be encouraging folks to try new things and think outside the box. And if there's something that you've always wanted to do, go out there, find a community, right? Connect back to the things. What could you do for hours when you were a child? Would you love to like
yes.
climb a tree? Did you want to just make something, create something? Do those things. I'll kind of sometimes tell clients to schedule homework around that and, spend 10 minutes doing something. And that sometimes can bring out discomfort because I have to practice resting and being playful. And so that is also a practice, sitting with discomfort. So it's
Right.
really just so kind of trying some new things, right?
Mhm. So, what are the two to three practical exercises that listeners can try this week to begin softening an old belief or a behavior pattern? What can people do?
That's a great idea. Okay, so first, pause is self-awareness.
Mhm.
Pause. Recognize, first off, we tend to go from 0 to 100 with these things. So it can feel like we're good and then we're activated. When that happens, instead of going straight to the behavioral response, a lot of the times I'll tell clients, just pause, set a timer for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You don't have to do anything in that moment. If you want to go and do that behavioral response afterwards, go ahead, but practice sitting with this discomfort. And you can even talk to yourself out loud in that moment. So you can
Yeah.
say something like, all right, I'm noticing a little discomfort up here in my chest, and it's feeling a little icky and it's feeling a little sticky. And I don't really like feeling like that, but it's there, and I'm just going to be present with it. I'm just going to notice it, right? So that can
Yes.
be one thing. As you're growing in that understanding, another thing that clients can do is kind of track some of these patterns, right? So, like, when does that discomfort show up so much?
Mhm.
Are there themes? Are there people, places, circumstances? If you have a notes app on your phone, just jot it down. You might
Yeah.
not be able to in the moment, no, because when our brain is activated, our prefrontal cortex kind of turns off, so that's our thinking and planning and judgment. But later you might look back and say, wow, that ties back to this, and I can be curious about that. So it's
Mhm.
really building that self-awareness in any way that you can disrupt those patterns and kind of throw a
Yes.
wrench in it in any way.
I love it. Oh, I could talk to you forever. This is such a deep, deep, deep subject.
Yes.
So, my last question for you is how do you maintain your own well being as a practitioner?
Yes. Oh, it's
Supervision, boundaries, rituals, so that you can keep showing up with the intentionality that you value.
well, I think that that is maybe 51% of my job, right?
Okay, great.
49% is when I'm in front of my clients. 51% is what am I doing when I'm not with them to make sure that I
Mm,
can be fully present when I'm sitting in front of them. So,
yes.
of course, my own therapy is a big part of this. I'm going to do my own therapy, but also making sure that I'm continuously educating myself and working with other clinicians to make sure that I'm supporting and continuing to grow in different practices and build different opportunities to support. So I'm doing educational opportunities, I'm doing supervision. Personally, I am a big yoga and I've been doing yoga and meditation for over 13 years. And so for me, that's a staple in my day to day. Even if I can't get in a full yoga practice, I'm moving in the 10 minutes that I have in between sessions. You might see me shaking it out, or you might see me doing some weird looking things, but that's to
All
move
right.
that energy, right? So I
Yeah.
use that, and I'm grateful to have a family of support. I love to be in nature. Nature is such a great thing to kind of recharge. So just really doing the things that I practicing what I'm sharing with my clients as much as I can.
Oh, wow. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming and sharing your depth of knowledge with our community this morning. Like I said, it always fascinates me when I reconnect with you. Your work is definitely needed. Amazing that you're helping people in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure as always. I so appreciate you.
We will see you again next year.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Wow. So thank you, everybody. So we are going to move on to our next speaker. She is going to come to us virtually through a presentation. Like, every year when we are on the Her Story Summit, we pick one person who can be a source of inspiration. It could be somebody who is needing some support, some help, but she is a member of our community. Now, Bernice is an amazing woman. Bernice Williams is based in New South Wales, Australia. She is fighting her own battle with cancer. Both she and her husband have gone through several rounds of cancer, and at least they're getting better. Bernice has managed to find a donor for her bone marrow transplant, which is going to happen this month. So we are trying to raise funds to support them. Please contribute in any way you can to help her raise the target of $20,000 that is needed for her care, for her hospital expenses. I was supported and helped by so many people when I was ill. And this has become one of my missions, that if I can support another woman who's needing the help, we will do whatever we can. So every cent helps. I've got the GoFundMe link at the bottom of the screen as well, so that during the summit, if you find that you can support her in any way, just go onto this GoFundMe page and donate whatever you can. So it is GoFundMe 8768D7E8. That is Bernice Williams in New South Wales. Now, while we're waiting for our next guest, I am going to share with you a philosophy that is close to my heart, the Ubuntu philosophy. So imagine if the world could heal itself the way that our blood heals wounds, quietly, naturally, without borders and without judgment. My story is deeply rooted in an African philosophy. Like I said, it is very close to my heart. It is a way of living, it's a way of being. And the Ubuntu philosophy says, I am because we are. It teaches us that humanity of is not made up of separate individuals, but one interconnected body. And just like the cells in your body, our survival as a species depends on remembering that there is no separation between us, that there is no you, there is no me, there's only we. In 2017, I collapsed in a rice field in Bali, Indonesia. I was rushed to hospital, hooked up to machines, and as I was watching the angiogram in front of me and seeing the dye rushing through my veins on the monitor in front, in that moment, I did something strange. I started a conversation with my heart. I asked, why are you doing this to me? And she answered back ever so gently. And she said, Gertrude, you have done this to me. I pump oxygen and nutrients into every single cell of your body, but you've forgotten to take care of me. That was the conversation that changed everything, because it reminded me that as my heart is connected to every cell in my body, every human being is connected to one another in the same way. This is the essence of Ubuntu. It is the spiritual foundation of most African societies, a way of life that says, I am human because I belong, because I'm connected, because I see myself through you. Ubuntu reminds us that our perceived differences are only skin deep. When scientists finished sequencing the human genome, they discovered that every single human being on this planet, be it black, white, rich, poor, male, or female, is 99.9% the same. So if our DNA knows the truth, why have we as a race forgotten it? Before I had my brush with death in that rice field in Indonesia, I thought I had it all. I was married to my best friend for 27 years. We had built a beautiful life in New Zealand after fleeing the AIDS pandemic in Africa. I was the mother of 3 amazing children, a property investor, a businesswoman with a plan to retire at the age of 49. And then it all collapsed. Our 31-year relationship was gone. I not only lost my marriage, my wealth, but I lost my health. And worst of all, I lost my will to live. I started having this recurring dream that I would end my life. On the balcony of my home, I lived in a beautiful 5-bedroom mansion on a hill. And my youngest son was the one who would find me. But when I shared this with him, he wrapped his arms around me and he hugged me and he said, Mom, I see you. I see your pain. I can see how miserable you are. You need to look after you. Those were the words that pulled me back from the edge. I'll never forget that day. They reminded me of something that Africa had taught me a long time ago. When life breaks you, you don't heal alone. You heal in community. At that point, my community was my son. I shared a deep struggle with my youngest son, and he supported me. In Africa, when women are broken by loss, by violence, by despair, we gather. We sit in circles. We share our stories. We weep together. In Zimbabwe, we actually believe that the minute you tell your story, your problem to someone else, the problem is halved. It's no longer yours to carry alone. We remind one another that you are not alone. We are one body. I didn't know then that by sharing my personal story online, by sharing my heartbreak and survival on social media, I was recreating this tradition virtually. Within days, thousands of women from around the world wrote back to me. One person saying, I ended up having a stroke. I had heart failure too. I nearly died of a broken heart. And slowly the circle has grown. Today, the circle is called the HerStory Circle, a community of over 250,000 women across 45 countries who share their stories, they share their voices, their healing, their humanity, their Ubuntu. Because when one of us bleeds, we all bleed. When one of us heals, we all heal. Think of it this way. When you cut your finger, your white blood cells will rush to that point to heal the wound. But not because it's the finger's responsibility, but because the body knows instinctively if one part of me is injured, the whole of me suffers. Humanity is exactly the same. The solution to our crisis around the world, the wars, the poverty, racism, climate collapse, is not power, it's not money, it's not politics. The solution is connection, compassion, radical empathy. The solution is to remember that we are the cells of one body that is called humanity. So, what does that mean to you? It means that tomorrow, when you bump into a stranger in a supermarket, on a street corner, when you scroll on social media and you see someone that you disagree with, when you see suffering in a community that is not your own, remember there is no stranger. There is no other. There is no you. There is no me. There is only we. And just as my heart spoke to me in Bali, I want to leave you with this question. What could change in your life, in your family, in your workplace, in your nation, if you started living as though we were one body? Ubuntu is not just an ancient African philosophy. It's a heartbeat, a rhythm older than time, a reminder that healing is not an individual act, it's a collective one. And if we live with this truth, then maybe, just maybe, the world could heal itself the way that our blood heals wounds. Thank you. That's my message for you today. So as we wait for our next guest, you'll just see who's chiming in online. We have Margaret. Margaret, thank you for coming online today and listening to today's online summit. Beautiful work. This is a passion, Margaret, to bring women's stories to the world every single day. So we're going to take a small commercial break while we wait for our next speaker. And we will be back in a few minutes with our next speaker for the day. Welcome back, everybody. It looks like our next speaker is here. I will introduce her and just read her bio. Thank you so much, Felicia, for coming in a little early. All right, here we go. So, Felicia describes herself as somebody who is a professional, and she helps professional, accomplished, educated women to build their money skills because life throws them a financial curveball. She has seen women devastated by divorce, job loss, health crisis, and loss of loved ones. And often this leaves them scared and feeling powerless. So she helps women to go from feeling self-doubt to safe, secure, and ultimately in control of their financial destiny. Wonderful to have you with us, my sister. Thank you so much for coming online today. You can unmute yourself so that everybody hears you. I think you're muted. Wonderful. The stage is yours.
So yes, I am Felicia Gopal, and today I'm going to be talking about the types of women that I help and serve. So oftentimes when I talk to women about financial services or money, one of the things that I hear again and again and again is, you know what, I am just not good in this area. And what I say to them is, you might not be good today, but when you started your business or you started your life, you weren't good at that either. It's just one of those things that develops over time, and it's a skill that you can learn. So you don't have to be concerned. You don't have to be worried. Just know that eventually, if you put in the work, just like you put in the work for your career, you will become educated and better at it. You may never know as much about financial services and all the things that I do as I do, but you could certainly take control. So when I talk to women, I talk to them really about how do we build the skill set? How do we build what it is that you need? So I tell people it starts with a foundation. There's a foundation that all of your finances is built upon. And the foundation is just making sure you've got, and this is probably something that you've heard time and time before, but you just need to make sure that you've got an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is really about making sure you've got 3 to 6 months of fixed expenses set aside so that if something were to happen in your financial life, you can deal with it. In addition to that, the other foundational piece is make sure you have your insurances in place. So the insurances is life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, property and casualty insurance, just all of your insurances. Because remember, the emergency funds kind of make sure that you are okay in the short term. So if you have a short-term emergency, you can go there. Or the insurances is that's when life throws you something really unexpected, and the insurances can often take the place of that. In the middle of that, once you have those two foundational pieces set up for yourself, then the next thing is the investments. And of course, that's where most people really want to start, is they want to start with their investments. But what I have found is if you start with your investments and you haven't made sure the other two pieces are propped up and proper, what you often will have to do is sell something that you have already put in place and you have built, and that's no good. So I always want to make sure you've got the foundation before you start working on the investments piece. For the investments piece in particular, what I also talk about is the fact that you want to make sure it's properly diversified. So what is diversified? A diversified portfolio means you don't have all of your money in one thing. So oftentimes when I sit down and look at a woman's portfolio, I will see that she might have 4 or 5 different mutual funds, but they all represent the same part of the market, which is fine when the market is going up, but can work against you when the market is going down. So you definitely want to make sure that your money is set up properly so that it has different segments of the market represented in your portfolio. So you want to have some large caps. Those are the largest companies in the United States or in the world. You want to have some small caps because typically you will get a better return from having small in your portfolio. You want to have some international in your portfolio because you don't want to have all of your money in just the US or Australia or wherever the heck you are. So you want to make sure that you've got your money diversified across different countries, different segments of the market. You might want to have some bonds in there depending upon your age. So those are all the components that you want to make sure that you have in your portfolio. The next thing you also need to do when you're talking about putting together a portfolio is you need to rebalance it. This is not one of those things that it's one and done. You don't just set up a portfolio and never give it any attention, just as you wouldn't have a baby and pay it no attention. It's something that you need to pay attention to at least on a quarterly basis. Is typically what I do with my clients, but at least certainly on an annual basis, you want to diversify your portfolio. You want to rebalance your portfolio because typically what happens when I talk to people about their portfolio, I talk to them about the fact that one of the things that happens is one segment of the market goes up, one segment of the market goes down. And what can happen over time is it's not set up anymore the way that you want it to be set up. So you want to make sure that you set up your portfolio in a way that it gets rebalanced on a consistent basis. And you want to make sure that it's really aligned with your values. That's, again, one of the things that's missing. Oftentimes when I talk to women, we often will set up our portfolios in ways that don't support us. I was just talking with a woman the other day, and she had a portfolio that had some companies in it that did not represent the way that her values. And so we talked about how she could divest herself from those particular investments. But on the other hand, I am not a big fan of stock picking. So I'm not a big fan of having and holding individual stocks. But it's certainly one of the things that you might want to take a look at is making sure your portfolio is set up in such a way that you are honoring the values that are important to you. So for women, oftentimes we're interested in climate change because we're often looking to put together a portfolio that means that the next generation is left better off than they found it. And so climate change might be important to you, equity might be important to you, social issues might be important to you. I'm increasingly finding that I've got clients who are committed to perhaps a investment philosophy that's in line with their I'm blanking on the words, with their beliefs, their beliefs in God or Mohammed or whatever that is for them. So there's also ways that you can set up your portfolio so that you're doing that. So definitely when you are setting up and thinking about your portfolio, you ought to be thinking about it in terms of how do I set this up so it's consistent with my values? How do I set this up so that it's something that will take care of me? Because ultimately the women that I work with are interested in having portfolios that will last them a lifetime and that will allow them to do whatever they want, whenever they want, with whomever they want for the rest of their lives. Because they're often looking to do things like travel around the world. They're looking to take care of family members. They've got a lot of interests that are important to them, and they're looking for their portfolio to help support that, but they're not looking to become a master at financial planning as I am. They're just looking for a portfolio that is set up in such a way that it supports them and their goals. So, so when I think about it, so we've talked about you want to have a portfolio that's set up on a foundation. You want to set up a portfolio that is properly diversified. You want to set up a portfolio that is rebalanced on a consistent basis. These are the things that are important, and you want to set it up such that your values are honored as you put together your portfolio. So those are the things that I really wanted to talk about in this talk. In addition to that, what I wanted to talk about is, Gertrude, I've completely blanked.
Okay, well, let me step in and we can unpack what you've shared so far with some questions. I absolutely love what you're doing because a lot of times we don't plan for the inevitable. We work our whole lives without putting anything aside, without thinking about ill health. I think I mentioned earlier my journey with heart failure, losing everything I worked for 25 years through a divorce. A lot of times women are not prepared. And what I love about your work is you are really making us think, 10 steps ahead, things that can go wrong. So let's just talk about your background and your mission to start off with. So you began your career with a degree in criminal justice before transitioning into financial planning after working at a estate planning team with an estate planning team. Can you talk to us about the pivotal shift and how the early experiences shaped your approach today?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking that question. I say that there was really 3 steps that had it. So when you're talking about making a transition, oftentimes it's not just a sudden shift. There's something that causes you to make a change. So the first shift for me was my parents got divorced when I was in college. So my father was an accountant. My mother was largely a stay-at-home mom. She started working kind of at the latter part of my growing up years, but my father really had handled the finances. So she went from being taken care of to having to take care of herself. So that was the first shift. The second shift was when I was in college. I met a man who was offered a job after college making more than either one of my parents were making at the time. And he said no. He said no to that opportunity, which was absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, my parents had worked all their lives to get to that stage, and he was being offered a job making more than that, and he said no. The reason he said no is because he wanted to start his own business. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's interesting. You want to start your own business. I guess you're thinking that you're going to make more in your new business than these guys were offering. And so that was the second thing that really just was kind of a step, a slap upside the head. And then the third thing was when I was working in that estate planning department, there was a gentleman that I came across, and our process was, Gertrude, was to take pictures of everything that we were reporting to the IRS. So his wife had passed away, and so what we were reporting to the IRS was a Mercedes convertible, red Mercedes convertible, 450 SL Mercedes in immaculate condition. She didn't take it out if the sun was shut. If there was clouds in the sky, if she had to drive too far. It was in immaculate condition. And I said to him when we were first getting started, oh, that's my dream car. I've always wanted a car like that. And the process in the United States, and when you're going through the estate planning process, it's about a 9-month process before you have to submit the paperwork. So
Right.
closer to the end, he calls me up and he says, Felicia, I'd like to offer you that Mercedes. And I was like, what Mercedes? I mean, it had kind of it had come across my desk and I had moved on, you know. And he
Yeah.
says, I'd like to offer you that. You made this process really smooth for me. And I really just wanted to thank you by offering you the opportunity to buy my wife's Mercedes. Now, I was not planning on buying a Mercedes that day, so it was a bit of a surprise. And I said, well, let me think about it. But I have to tell you, Gertrude, what is really true is I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it because I hadn't handled my finances well up to that point. So I had to call him up the next day and say, you know what, I can't buy that Mercedes. And he stopped and he paused. And he said, Felicia, do you mind if I say something to you? And I said, sure. And he says, every single day, he goes, I don't know how much you make, but I'm sure you're paid well given this firm. Every
Yes.
single day, you work with people like myself who are millionaires. And you clearly have not learned anything from the people you're working with. So it's just like, if you ever want to be in a situation like mine, you're going to have to start to learn something about personal finance. So I just took that on and I was just like, because he said, you should have been able to you should have been able to borrow it. You should have been able to have it in the bank. You should have been. But I didn't because I hadn't handled my finances. I hadn't handled my credit. I didn't have the savings that I was just talking to you about. I didn't have any of those things in place. And so that was the critical final shift for me that made me go, you know what, I need to learn something about personal finance. And I shifted from being an accountant to going into the financial services industry.
What a journey, and what a blessing, though, to meet somebody who reflected back to you something that you weren't seeing about yourself. You were in the business, you were helping these millionaires, but you weren't helping yourself. Massive, massive, massive shift.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about redefining the American dream, right? On your website, you mentioned that working with millionaire clients challenge the traditional American dream script. How has this insight influenced your own financial philosophy and the way that you guide your clients?
Oh, that's a great question because so many of us here in the United States were raised in the same script. We were told, work hard, get a good job, get educated, get a good education. So we get the first degree, we get the second degree, sometimes we get the third degree. We often will we will often borrow in order to do it. So we're accumulating a lot of debt. And then we're hoping that our hard work will get noticed so that they will give us more opportunities so that we can go out and create this great life. But what's the problem with that is all of this debt that is dragging us down as we are starting to launch into our careers. Oftentimes we might get to a level of success in our careers, but the problem with that is it's always tied to somebody else. So if they get to a point where they do a change in their business model and they no longer need us, we now are subject to somebody else's beliefs in ourselves. And so it just, for many people, and we started to see that at the beginning of this year when there were all of those massive layoffs here with a lot of people with the American government. So they had good government jobs. My parents had good government jobs, but they had never met Doge. And there's a good chance that I had a mother and a father who were both working for them. Could you imagine if both of them got laid off at the same time, the impact that it would have had on us? And this is one of the things that people are not prepared for. They think everything is going to be perfect and is going to go well. And the reality is it may and it may not. But when I talk to people, talk to women about being prepared, it's not being prepared for when, it's being prepared for if. So yes, if you have the money set aside and you get laid off, you don't have to scramble and take the first job. If you have all of your pieces in place, then you have lots of different places to pull from. So that's the thing I talk to the women I work with is let's create for you lots of pots for you to pull from so that if something happens in the economy, something happens with your job, something happens with a partner, then you can navigate everything.
Wow. Now, I'm curious to learn about your programs and the work that you do in the community. You designed the FFF program, the Finance Freedom Fundamentals, from your own journey, from saving $5 a month to building systems for sustainability. Can you share what motivated you to formalize that into a 7-week curriculum? And what's the biggest aha moment while you were building it?
So I built the Financial Freedom Fundamentals course really because financial services doesn't serve people who need what I teach in that course. Oftentimes when I'm working with somebody, the industry prefers to work with somebody who's got some assets. They're not trying to pay off their debt. They're not trying to do all that. But there's a lot of people who have those needs, and financial services doesn't serve them. So the reason I created the course was because I know that in general, the industry doesn't serve people who fit into that demographic, but they need the help. They're going to be challenged getting to where they want to be until they fix and learn the skills that I talk about in that particular course. So for me, the big aha was that the industry didn't serve the people that course was created for, and I just created a course that I knew some of the people that were coming into my world really needed.
Wow. Now, you lead a community of women who are confidently independent with their money, traveling the world with purpose and legacy. How do you cultivate that level of empowerment within your programs and your community?
Well, I would say that really it's fostering what is already there for them. So many of them were already travelers. They were already committed to traveling the world. They were already doing that. And so what I was able to help them do largely was show them how their money could support them in doing that, such that they could travel the world freely and not be concerned about how it's going to be when they get back. Because I have seen people who've had great vacations and then come back to a struggle. I'm not interested in women who are going through that. I'm trying to get it so that you can go out into the world and come back and things are still in ease and flow in your life. That for me is what I'm trying to develop. And it's something that was already there. And I'm just showing them how to make their money support what they're already up to.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. Now, in a recent feature, you emphasize that cash flow is a lifeline, not just a metric, especially for women entrepreneurs. What strategies do you teach to help women move from chaos to confidence around their cash flow?
Well, Gertrude, I can't tell you how many women, myself included, at one point in my life, had no idea what their numbers were.
Yeah.
They didn't know how much, I mean, when they're business owner, they didn't know how much money they were making on a consistent basis. They didn't know how much money they needed to be making on a consistent basis. They hadn't really thought about it in relationship to the bills that were going out and the commitments that they had already made. And so for some people, it's just about getting clear on what's so about their finances. So it's hard to plan if you don't know where the money's coming in and going out. And I don't want the money going out to be a surprise when it goes out. So I'm always about helping people understand their numbers at a fundamental level. And then when I'm working with them on a more consistent basis, especially my business owner clients, I'm talking to them about what's the break even of your business. And so just having these kinds of conversations with women is perhaps something that they haven't had, certainly not from their financial advisor. It may be something that they talk to with their accountant, but I'm a financial planner who brings that into the conversation because I'm a business owner talking to business owners. So I have what I bring from my business, and I bring it into our conversations when we're chatting about what they're up to.
Oh, I love that. That's just beautiful. So now let's talk about impact, legacy, and content strategy.
Mm.
You've spoken about wanting to build financial control mastery as a legacy that can be passed down to your daughters. How does that work look to you, both personally and professionally?
Well, I think the reality is I'm not sure if my girls will go into my business. I mean, that's the reality. I've got a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. You know, they're starting their careers. I don't know if they're going to take over my business. But when I talk about it being a legacy, one of the beautiful things about financial services in general is I could create my business in such a way that it is paying me past the time I am working in it. So depending on how I structure and build my business, I could have my business continue to pay out to me for maybe even a decade or so after. A lot of people's businesses will die when they stop working. And my business is not really structured that way. So that's part of the legacy part of it. But the other thing that I talk about in terms of legacy, Gertrude, is the fact that I am deliberately working to impact women who will take what they've learned from me and share it with their families, so their families will get that. So we talk about the Rockefellers and some of these families that have built legacies that have lasted generations and generations. Part of what they pass on is the knowledge of how to handle money. That is not necessarily something that all families do. In fact, many families don't talk about money, so there's nothing to share and pass on. So I'm deliberately going out there, finding women who are interested in building a legacy of empowerment to the people who are in their families. They learn something from me, they take it back into their families, they share it with their families, and they start to share. So I've been talking to my kids about money and building wealth since they were young, just because they're my kids. But one of the things that I'm really clear to me is there was a statistic, and I'm going to have to find it one of these days, but there was a statistic that I remember reading at some point in my career, and they were saying that Japanese kids typically will have saved about $100,000 by the time they're 18. And I was just like, I don't know how they've done it, but I may not have the statistics quite correct, but I thought that was really impressive. And so my intention, even though I didn't communicate it, is for my kids to be in that genre. So no, they're not at $100,000 at their age, but they're significantly further ahead than a lot of the kids in their lives. And it's because I set the intention and I was really deliberate about sharing what I know, such that when they first started their jobs, they started Roth. When my daughter got a little internship that included a retirement plan, we put her into the retirement plan. She's just like, I can't put that much money in. It doesn't matter to me. Just put the money in. It's going to make a huge difference in your life. So it's the legacy that I'm looking to pass on as a parent and as as a woman who is committed to this is it's not just a business that I pass on, but it's what I share, because I tell people part of what I focus on is tax planning. I take what I learn and what a lot of wealthy families use, and I share that with the people that I work with who may not be in the 1% that, you know, we always talk about here in the United States, but the skills and the knowledge of what I know is still transferable. And
Yeah.
even though they may not know that it's a strategy that a millionaire would use, I know. And I know it's going to make a difference in their lives and their kids' lives and then their grandchildren's lives. And that's the legacy that I'm really looking to create for the families that I work with.
Oh, I love it. I could talk to you forever. I've got a few more questions if you don't mind.
Sure. Go ahead.
So let's talk about pivoting to visibility and authority online. You know, a lot of women, and especially Black women, are not utilizing this technology that's out there right now in creating visibility for ourselves. With Her Story, this is one of our missions, right? To give women exposure, to help them build their digital footprint. And you've done it really well. I saw in a recent article that talked about how organizing your rich content library can increase your visibility, which in turn will help more women to find you. In what ways are you currently evolving your digital presence, and how can others learn from your path?
So so when I first started in the industry, I got started, and I tell people I got started backwards. I met some people that were really into tactics. And so I spent a lot of time and a lot of wasted money working on tactics. But one of the things that I discovered after I'd been in business for a while is how important was it to say what I say and become known for a thing. And
Yeah.
so I've been able to tap into a guy by the name of Perry Marshall. He was the original person that I learned some of my tactics from. Now I'm paying a lot of attention to Dennis Wu, who is really good at helping you understand and increase your visibility. Now he's spent over $1 billion through his various different businesses and the companies that he's worked with, including like the Golden State Warriors and, you know, companies of that size and caliber. But he's taking that and he's bringing it to business owners so that we can learn to increase our visibility. So there were things that, you know, I was just doing stuff. And so what they have helped me do is to really hone and focus on the things that are going to have the biggest impact, so that I can be better known. So, you know, Dennis is encouraging me to do a video a day. You know, I don't know that I do a video a day, but I'm doing a lot more videos than I used to. He encouraged me to put together my Google panel. So I have that. You know, he's encouraged me to do all of these different things. So I show up. So if somebody was to look for Felicia Gopal, I show up in a particular visible way because of what I learned from these gentlemen in it. So, you know, I don't think you always have to learn from women. I think that there are there are men who are advocates for business owners' growth, and I listen to them.
Yeah, we do have to bring men on board as our allies. It's absolutely crucial that we learn from them. We take as much as we can when they're generous enough with information. So we actually try and make sure that 25% of the people who speak on the Her Story platform are men. There's some smart men out there who are allies who do want to support and help women to grow. So now my last two questions for you. The one is going to be focused on how to leverage the 5Ds for financial preparedness. Now, I know you talk about the 5Ds being divorce, disability, downsizing, disasters, and death. How have you woven these realities into your curriculum or coaching? And what's one practical tip that you can consistently emphasize to women?
So I would say, I'm going to answer the questions not in order, but I would say the tip is, while you never want those things to happen to you, none of them, you don't want any of those to happen to you. The reality is it could, and it's better to be prepared for the possibility than to be surprised by the inevitability of it. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I really focus on is because if you're prepared and nothing happens, you're still, all of the work that you've done to get prepared, is still there, but if you are not prepared and one of those things happens to you, then you left scrambled. And I just don't want that. So whether or not nobody, as I said, nobody wants them to happen, but take the time to prepare. If there's an area that you don't know, go and find somebody who knows it, who can help you build that skill, and help you build that bank for yourself so that you can navigate those kinds of life events that could really just take you out or devastate you.
I love it. And I know that the one D that is inevitable is death. It's interesting how people don't want to talk about death. They don't want to. It's an uncomfortable subject. We don't want to face it, but it's one of those things that's going to happen to any of us. It's inevitable.
It is inevitable. And, it's just like I sometimes will talk to a woman who doesn't have any life insurance and her husband is the breadwinner. And it's just like, well, he doesn't want to buy life insurance. I was just like, well, why don't you buy the life insurance on him? I was just like, because you're the one who's going to be devastated when he passes away. So you can write the check, pay the bill, not a problem. It's not a big deal. And the fact that he doesn't want to deal with it, it's okay. I talked to one of my guests on my podcast was talking about sometimes you just don't want to have the argument. Sometimes you just don't want to have the argument, but you still need to take care of yourself. So don't have the argument. Or the other thing that she said in her interview is sometimes you just have to have the argument and do what needs to be done. So, there's two different ways that you can handle it. Just have the argument so that so that you are covered and taking care of yourself the way that you want, or the other way is to not have the argument and just get it done, because the women I work with are typically working. They're not typically dependent upon their husband's income and wages. So I was just like, just take your money and take care of it. I know sometimes we think it's his job to do, but if he's not doing his job, then you do his job for him, especially if you are going to suffer because he hasn't taken care of something you think is important.
That's so true. Now, my last question is, with nearly 3 decades in financial services, dozens of podcast episodes, and leadership roles in the CPF board, where do you see your next chapter of your journey heading? And what's one new impact that you are eager to focus on next?
So, I've been very fortunate to be in the industry for as long as I've been in the industry. I would say that really the thing that I am focused on is I'm within shouting distance of retirement. So I'm really looking at what retirement means. And does it mean that I'm no longer working in the industry, or am I just changing how I work in the industry? And that's really one of the things that I'm really just navigating. And the other thing is, I know, because of the statistics, I know that a lot of people who retire really struggle with health and connection and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So I'm really focused on building my connections so that I've got people to talk to, I've got people to travel with, I've got people to walk with, I've got all of those things. And just kind of a personal thing is I really want to master growing orchids. I love orchids. I like having orchids. I figured that maybe I've got another 5-10 years to figure out how to keep an orchid alive for more than
Right.
a month or two. I was just like, I love them, and I don't know if I overwater them. I don't give them enough sun. I don't know what it is, but that's the one thing that I really want to do for myself is to just learn to grow orchids and have my house covered in orchids.
Oh, I love it. And orchids are very sensitive plants. They are very, very sensitive plants. They need a lot of care and the right type of care.
Yes, they do. And I have
Absolutely.
not mastered it. I just threw out the last orchid that I had.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful challenge. When you go into your retirement, you will have more time to focus on these things. It's been such a pleasure connecting with you. I want you to stay on for a few minutes because I'm going to play a short little video which might be of interest to you of an amazing African American woman that I met who is launching a very unusual product line. And I just want to talk about her with you after you watch this 2-minute video, okay? And then I'll let you go. Here we go. Oh, that's not good. It's telling me the video can't play. Let me find it another way. And this is the thing with technology. You have everything queued and lined up, and when you're ready to put it out there, things don't work. Let's see if this is going to work. No. I might have to email this video through to you. But she is an amazing young woman who's created a fascinating clothing line based on the quilts that African Americans used to design to escape slavery. I would love to connect you with her. Every African American woman that I'm meeting, I'm connecting them with Candace. So I'll do that via email if you don't mind.
That would be great.
Fantastic. Felicia, thank you for coming online and sharing your incredible story, your knowledge. I've learned so much from you this morning. Absolutely fascinating to have you in our tribe, pushing this information out to women to be smart with their money and to plan for the inevitable. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for including me and inviting me to be part of this fantastic summit. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in so far. We're going to take a small commercial break and be back with you in about 15 minutes when my next speaker comes online. Thank you so much for tuning in so far.
off the phone now then.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next phase of the Her Story Online Summit. My next guest is Lynn Rogoff. This is an incredible, inspiring filmmaker whose journey as a storyteller spans several decades that blend creativity, history, technology in a very unique way. She is working on an award-winning film called Bird Woman, and I am going to play the trailer before she comes online and shares her incredible journey with us today. It always inspires me when we can bring creative women onto the platform to show the breadth of what women can do when they set their minds to it. So Lynn, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm hoping that the trailer will play and we'll have no issues here. So here we go.
I do not believe what I hear. A woman and child on this military expedition?
I name you American name, Janie. Are you sure you're not a hawk?
Hawk? No. Eagle, maybe.
She can't be bribed. She'll not drink your firewater. She'll be loyal. She not demand pay. She speaks their tongue. You are very rich here, rich beyond your dreams. There is nothing there but angry spirits.
Little Eagle. Is that you, Mother? Stay by my side.
Take courage.
Am I Shoshone?
Are you Manatare? Have you become Paleface? Or are you still my blood?
I am not becoming this Janie. But what is happening to me?
All right, I will bring Lynn on. Lynn, thank you so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure to reconnect with you and reintroduce you to the tribe. The stage is yours.
Well, I'm really glad to be here today and participate in your summit. It's an honor. And I know you've been doing fabulous work with women's projects around the world. So we're glad to be part of it. And we've been, since last you and I spoke, we've been very actively pursuing developing episode 2 and 3 of our series. And we've been working with a team working with AI software, and we've developed a very special new project of AI series. We're the first series to be produced using AI tools. So we're now on Herflix, and we're on Zumo, and we're in the midst of talking with our distributor to be on Tubi. So we're very excited by all that's going on in recent months. We also won a grant from the university where I teach, and we have just produced chatbots of each character. So you could go on our website and ask our characters any questions you want about themselves or the expedition or the period in history, and they will talk to you and answer your questions. They've come back from the 21st century, back from the 19th century to talk to you. So we have a lot of different ways of interacting with our product. And that is what we're aiming for, is to reach global audiences in a number of different ways. So we tested these chatbots in the schools and the museums and the libraries. So we feel that we have a lot of different ways of interacting with our characters and with the story, so you can get a real depth of an experience. That's what we've been doing most recently. And this new software that we're using, which has just come out in the last 6 months. So we're really on the cutting edge here of using tools that come from Google and DeepMind and Runway and Sora. These are just very edgy tools that have really been exciting to work with, because we could get all of these characters, photorealistic speaking characters, moving through time and space and shape shifting. We now have her being able to turn into an eagle on camera. So it's very exciting. That's what we've been trying to make, a female superhero, spiritual female superhero. So that's what we've been up to.
So maybe let's go back a little bit. If you could give people a background to what this film is about, how it started, and how you're using the power of AI to generate the film.
So the story takes place in 1803 to 1805 primarily. It starts in that period, and then it moves to a later period when after the expedition. So what happened was that in 1803, this expedition went across the country, the continent of the United States, to investigate whether they could find a water passage by water. At that time, there were no roads, and so the only way to travel was by water. And so they discovered, when they stopped and wintered with a Native American tribe, that there was no water route, and that they would have to borrow horses from the tribes living in the Rocky Mountains. Because at that time, nobody really knew what the Rocky Mountains were, or how big they were, or how steep they were, or how long they were. So the country was filled with Native American tribes living across the entire continent. And so tribal elders recommended that they take this young woman living among them, who was pregnant and 16 at the time, that she had been absconded by another tribe, brought east, and now was living among them in what is now North Dakota, and that she knew the language and she knew the way. So they decided to take her, despite the fact that they would have to take a newborn with them on a military expedition. And needless to say, the expeditioners were not too thrilled about this, but it ended up being that she was a great peacekeeper. Because she told the tribes that encountered the expedition that they were coming in peace and that they needed help. So they were able to traverse the entire continent, get to Pacific Ocean, winter in the Pacific, and go back again across the country safely without anybody getting killed or hurt. So this was the first encounter, really, between the natives and the white man. And it was a peaceful encounter. And so she represents all of that. And she's become a heroine in both the native lexicon and in the American history. So I was very curious about her story and decided to try to tell it as both screenplay and as audio drama. And then when AI came to be, I discovered these tools where we could make, on a low budget, an animated series and investigate the latest tools. So we decided to go forward with making the series using AI tools. And we were very excited by it because we had worked with Native American actors and with elders and historians. So we had a very rich story that spanned number of years with quite an adventure. So when these tools came available to us, we were just thrilled that we could use them and all do it from our computer and tell a story without having to raise millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, which would have taken had we done it with traditional animation or traditional live action. So we had Native American musicians and actors recording the audio, and we edited all the audio, and then we matched the audio with the AI tools, and that's how the project came to be.
Absolutely fascinating. Now, you are using this cutting edge technology. It's fascinating to see the images that you've managed to create. Can you tell us step by step the process that has brought you to this point for those curious filmmakers out there? A lot of people don't know how to use AI technology to the maximum, and you seem to have really stretched it to a beautiful extent. So give us a little bit of your process and what tools are out there AI wise for filmmakers.
Well, I had experience in traditional filmmaking, and then I had experience making games. So in the 90s, I made a game with blue screen technology. And so I had a technological background and a lot of technological interest. So I was able to discover how to interact with these tools. And I had a team of interns. The university was very supportive of me and gave me a team of interns to help us. And so we decided to use a tool called DID at first. And DID is a company in Israel that has invented this tool where you could import your audio and import your image, and it will export that character speaking those lines. And this was, and having facial movement and emotion. So we were quite shocked that we could do this and thrilled. And so we started out with DID, and then we moved to do the background and the characters in Midjourney, which is another tool that creates beautiful characters and beautiful backgrounds. So at this point, when we made episode 1, the video quality was really not possible. You could not really make video. So we had to invent methodologies to take a still image and turn it into a moving image. So we used another product called Runway, where we fed it the still image, and then with paintbrush technology that they have, you can tell it to move the water one way, move her hair another way, move the sky a third way, move the moon another way, and make the water scary or the water's calm. And so we were able to create a motion picture for episode 1 using that. Now it's moving very fast, AI video. In the last 6 months, they've come up with tools that will create 5 to 8 at the most seconds of video. And you have to learn how to communicate what they call prompt. So there's a very clear and definitive methodology for communicating with this software, where you have to tell it exactly what you want and how you want it lit and what objects you want and how much movement you want and what the lighting should be. And hopefully it will understand what you're talking about. And there's a lot of iterating because, for example, it doesn't really know what 1800s versus 1900s house would look like or a boat would look like. So we have to tell it and feed it images of this is what a farmhouse in the 1800s would look like, or this is what a boat that didn't have even steam, it just had oars, would look like in the 1800s. So we were forcing it to tell a story in the 1800s. So we were using 21st century software to tell a story that took place in the 19th century or the early 1800s. So you have to teach the software what exactly you want. So for example, one of the tribes, they didn't live in tents, they lived in what they called earthen huts. And the software did not know what a hut was. So we had to keep telling it, this is what a earthen hut looks like. So you have to have a lot of patience to communicate with these tools. And it's a large learning curve. But today, with all of this software out there, ChatGPT and Claude, you can start refining your prompting so that finally you have found a way to communicate with the software. So there is a large learning curve in learning how to communicate with these tools. And some of them start hallucinating. You could tell this is what the character will look like, and this is what the street looks like. But then it changes it all of a sudden, and it changes the characters, and it changes the street, and it changes the house. So some of them have more control over their generating of images than other tools. And so you have to be very patient with your expectations that it's not going to be something that's going to happen 1, 2, 3. For example, we did a storyboard for episode 2 and 3 for our new series. And we have 5 minutes and 44 seconds of storyboard for a 2-hour project that took us 4 months just to get the 5.5 minutes, 5 minutes and 44 seconds. So it's not voila, it happens. It's patient plotting. And who knows, you don't know if you're really going to get the full hour in one tool. You have to be able to go from one tool to the other. And sometimes we think we may have to go back to traditional animation because some of the software cannot generate what you want yet. So we're really at a very early stage of AI, but I would suggest that people spend the time investigating these tools because they're very exciting.
These are truly exciting times, Lynn. Very, very exciting times to live in. And you are really using this cutting edge technology. But how do you balance cultural accuracy with the AI generated elements?
Well, I did a lot of research, so I know, what the attitudes towards nature were, and oh, what the attitudes towards the tribe. Each tribe had a attitude different than another towards the explorers, towards their environment. And so when I spent years prior to this researching and writing the script, so I worked with historians and with tribal elders and with actors to, for example, I discovered that the natives feel very strongly about their hair. And if you noticed in a lot of 19th century images, they'll show that, and even nowadays, natives have very long hair and they have beautiful hair, and they feel very spiritual about their hair. And so you don't want to have a character touching their hair without permission,
Yeah.
getting permission. So that, you learn those things as you progress in the storytelling and in the writing and the researching. You learn what is important. And so, for example, they have a feeling, the whole story is based on this concept of she wants to find her family that she lost when she was kidnapped, and goes back to the Rocky Mountains, discovers that the mother and father have been killed. And so when she gets, but they have a story, the way they tell their creation story in the Shoshone world, they say that they came from a big fish. And so when she sees the whale, when they got to the Pacific Ocean, there were beached whale on the sand there, and she demanded that she be able to see this whale. And so in my telling of the story, because mine is magical realism, it's not slice of life, she's able to go inside the whale and look for her ancestors there. So we were trying to tell a cultural story as well as tell the story of the expedition. So we tried to tell the story from her point of view. And that's why the actors loved the story and wanted to work on it, because they felt we were really telling their story.
So, do you believe that AI will democratize filmmaking, making it easy for underrepresented voices to tell their stories, or will it create new barriers?
I think right now, and I've always been in the cutting edge of technology, because I feel that if you get involved early, you have a chance to make a mark and do your work. Because once the industry gets mature, then the big players take over. So now is a really great time for filmmakers to start investigating AI tools, because now you can, for small weekly or monthly sum, you can use these tools if you spend the time learning how they work and making whatever you want to make. And I chose to make this story because I had all this content that I had been involved in with for years. So, but other people might have stories that they've never been able to tell because they couldn't raise the millions of dollars. They couldn't get, big producers or actors or directors involved. But here you have a chance to tell your story using these tools, but you must learn the technology. So it's a learning curve, and you have to have a technological aptitude and work with people who are have that technological aptitude. So you have to say you're going to learn it.
Yeah, the early adapters are the ones who are going to take advantage of this technology.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
what are some of the ethical challenges that you've encountered using AI storytelling, particularly when representing diverse communities and these historic figures?
Well, that's a good question. So these tools are been trained by whoever's creating these software. So what they're doing is they're feeding, I gather, I don't really know for sure what they're doing, but they're feeding them, let's say, the Pirates of the Caribbean, or they're feeding them other movies that have been out there. So there is this, it knows the style, it knows certain films. So when you tell it, oh, I want it to look like what this film looked like, it knows the film. So there is a derivative element because it's deriving its content from that other film that it was fed. So you have to be very, very careful to make sure that it tells your story, not the other person's story. So, for example, we had a scene where she actually jumps into the river to save the expeditioners' equipment. And this was told in the journals, in the 1804 journals, that they were shocked that she had jumped into this raging squall to get their equipment. And they really made it was a turning phase for their attitude towards her because she was so brave. And so we tried to get AI tools to get her in the water. And they kept coming up with these female pirate looking resolutions of that kind of image. I didn't want a pirate. She was not a pirate. She was not a female pirate. She was a Native American young woman jumping in the water. So it took a lot of iterating to say, no, this is not what we want. We want her to look like this and dress like this and act like this. And so you have to be very insistent with the software that you're not going to accept what they were trained to give out.
Not. That's
Right.
fascinating.
Right.
Yeah, and you get better and better at giving it the right prompts and training it to listen to you. I know when I started using AI, I had to upload 6 of my books and I said, analyze my writing style. And now it writes almost like it's me who's written, the content. So it is a fascinating process. Very exciting time for us to be here.
Right.
So as someone who trained at NYU and with decades of experience in classic filmmaking, how has AI changed your creative process while still honoring the traditional storytelling craft?
Well, when I went to directing school, the teachers reiterated the same concept over and over, that you had to have a strong concept in order to direct a movie or a play. You needed, and what does a strong concept mean? It means you have to have a unified concept where the costumes and the actors and the set and the theme and all revolve around the same concept. So are you telling a modern 21st century story, or you're telling a 19th century story? And how are you telling that story? And what do you want as your theme? So the 5 Aristotelian elements of theme and language and character and spectacle all need to be unified. And so that's always going to be a traditional storytelling, whether you're using AI or you're using traditional film, or you're in the game business, or you're in the theater business. They're always the same set of concepts. Now, AI will come up with novel ideas.
Yeah.
So, for example, we had this one scene where they're in the mountains and one of the horses falls over the cliff and falls into a ravine. This would happen on the expedition. It's told in the Lewis and Clark journals. So we prompted it to do that, have the eagle fall, have the horse fall, and the way the horse fell was really great. I mean, it did it. It did it. It You can't tell it. Oh, I want the horse to go left or right. It said, give us a horse falling, and it took some iterating, several different times, and finally it gave us a horse that you saw that, oh my God, this horse is going to die from this fall. And then we did another element where we wanted her to be able to fly away, turn into an eagle and fly away from they were cutting up this horse to eat it because they were starving. And she didn't believe in the cutting up horses and eating the horses, because the horses were your friends,
Right.
your family. You shouldn't be doing that. And so she flies away with her child, and they both turn into eagles. And she feeds the eagle, instead of feeding him horse meat, she feeds him tree bark.
Right.
And so, because they did eat tree bark, and so it was able to generate a mixture of a human being and an eagle flying. So she
Oh,
has the
wow.
head of a Sacagawea and the body of an eagle, and she's flying. So it was able to generate these novel images.
Yeah.
I mean, we told it to do it, but
Fascinating.
it's if you keep telling it, it will eventually give you an image that you feel is substantial. But so, for example, one of the times it did it, it made the feathers red and black.
Right.
So I said, "Oh, I like that." I hadn't thought of it that way, but
Yes.
because it's not slice of life,
Yeah.
it was our bird woman. It wasn't, the a white-headed eagle with brown feathers. It's our bird woman. She's got red and black feathers.
I love that. So the creativity comes in the creation process as well.
Right,
Just
exactly.
don't know what you're going to get. So looking ahead, what do you envisage as the biggest opportunity for filmmakers who embrace AI? And can it change distribution, audience engagement, or even the role of the director?
Well, it is changing right now. I mean, of course, there's always the issue of copyright that has been being discussed right now globally. So what the lawyers are saying is that your prompting is what shows your proof of your intellectual property. So whatever your prompt is proves that you have materially created this image. And so that becomes very important from a line of title point of view. So you want to make sure you own your material. And and that also is involved with the distributor wants to be assured that it's a copyrighted issue.
That's true.
That there's
Yeah.
no copyright problem. So that's one thing that we've been very intent upon retaining all of our prompts. And so I think that it's only going to come more and more important as the tools get better and better.
Yeah.
Because what the studios and the producers and the directors are discovering is that they don't have to raise so much money and they don't have to bring such gigantic teams
Yeah.
into the fold. And so I think that filmmaking will change in that an independent filmmaker will have a more of a chance to make films.
Okay. My last question for you is all about legacy and impact. Your body of work blends innovation with meaningful stories. How do you hope your AI-driven projects will influence future generations of storytellers and the evolution of cinema?
You know, that's a good question because what happened is that we've gotten a lot of derivative product now. So we've got zombies, and then we got Zombie 2, and then we have the futuristic dystopian movie, and each one seems very similar to the other one. And these films get made and distributed because, oh, it's just like the other one. And now they feel confident that there's an audience for it. And so what AI has to offer is that you can now make a film without a large overhead, and you can make the independent ideas and the novel ideas that haven't been told and retold. And so people are investigating that. I am investigating it. I see a lot of very derivative AI products out there. They're still making the zombies, and they're still making the dystopians, and they're still making the futuristic. And I think, unfortunately, there's a generation that's been trained that that's what a film is.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I have been trying to tell more traditional kinds of narrative stories where there's a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's period, and it's not necessarily car chases and people getting shot, because this has become the new normal. Is you open up a film and in the first 5 minutes all these people have been shot and killed and run over or whatever. And
storytelling is dying. Yeah. Well, Lynn, thank you so much.
All right. Well, I hope I helped you. I hope that other people get a chance to make movies and ask me questions, and they can reach us at amerikids.com, AMERIKIDS, if they want more information about our project.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lynn.
All right.
Always a pleasure to reconnect with you. We'll see you again next year. Bye-bye.
So long. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, fascinating world of making films with AI. Thank you so much, Lynn. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Today, we've had a very interesting day with speakers being ill, not getting here on time, but the project continues. And my next speaker is not new to our community. She has been on the Her Story podcast before. And Morgan is the founder of LQD Assets, a company that she built from the ground up to bridge the world of Bourbon investment and brand development. Under her leadership, LQD Assets has raised over 21 million. She manages 10,000 plus barrels and operates 110,000 square feet of bonded warehouse space while supporting nearly 25 brands and distilleries. A Kentucky native and lifelong entrepreneur, Morgan is redefining how heritage, finance, and innovation converge in America's signature industry. So Morgan, welcome, welcome, welcome. Wonderful to have you with us today. And thank you. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again. And yes, you made some great points. I feel like entrepreneurship is something that you kind of know is in you at a really early age. And for me, that curiosity and desire to create was there at a very young age. I remember some of my earliest memories are spending time on the construction site with my dad, learning how he ran his construction company. They applied a lot of those tactics in our home life as well. My typical chores when I was growing up weren't picking up my toys and vacuuming. It was writing payroll checks and balancing checkbooks. So I was taught responsibility and money management at a pretty young age. And so, this has really carried over into my life as I've gotten older. If I wanted to get an iPod Touch or buy a trampoline, I was working to figure that out and, really got creative with that. When I was in middle school, around that age, I was doing duct tape wallets, bookmarks, bottle cap art, all the things that, looking to find the most creative way to make $1. And I even went through the process of building a business plan for a restaurant. It was a fun little task my dad gave my siblings and I and one of my friends, and we would spend every afternoon in the library on Fridays building a business plan. We were figuring out what tables we wanted, what did our menu look like, spending time actually building a business plan. We had a little white binder with all these things printed out, and it was a great experience for me. And at the time, it was just fun. Now I see so much value in that. It actually led me into my next business, which was pressure washing, and built a little pressure washing business in the summers in college. And in Kentucky, the distilleries put off some soot that gets all over the buildings and the sidewalks. And so a lot of people get their buildings pressure washed, once or twice a year. And so my friend and I went and said, let's go pressure wash this. And we grew that business to be working with multiple commercial entities. We even had a whole neighborhood that we had contracted to do all of their pressure washing for. And so, there's a lot of things at a young age that taught me about building a business. And even though it felt like play sometimes, it's very applicable experience. And then, when I went off to college, got my engineering degree, really focused on the problem solving, the systems thinking, the analytical mindset, which partnered with my financial curiosity. I've always been interested in learning how a business works and learning how to build wealth across the board. And in college, one of the things that my family and I did, really my dad, his best friend, and his son, we built a tenants in common trading account so we could start learning about other businesses in the stock market, all of that kind of things. And from there, it really exposed me to the world of investments. I remember when I was probably 13 or 14 years old, my parents opened my first stock account with me, and I had to walk into a broker's office and pay him $20 every time I wanted to buy a share of Apple. And oh boy, has that changed. So, the investment side of things at a very young age was something that I was always very interested in. And partner that with the analytical mindset, business was a no-brainer for me. So I got my engineering degree. And while I was doing that, I actually got the opportunity to kind of come full circle back to my home state of Kentucky and start investing in bourbon barrels, which was, a unique asset class in the first place, and kind of mirrored the opportunity to participate in private equity without the requirements of, being an accredited investor. And it was just friends and family trying something out. And it actually became very successful. And so while I was at my engineering job for several years, I started exploring that more in depth and actually got the opportunity to build the company I have today, LQD Assets, that we were speaking about previously. And it really partners that investment curiosity with the heritage that, I cling to so dearly. I'm very proud of where I'm from. Most people from Kentucky are. And so it's a huge part of my heritage is the bourbon industry. And so this allowed me to kind of connect my interest in the finance world and investing very deeply with the heritage that, I grew up with. And so from there, the opportunity kind of hit the ground running. I took our first original 9 investors, and we kind of grew from that to now nearly 100 investors. As mentioned, we've raised a lot of money for barrel purchases, and our whole goal here is to provide the opportunity for brands to grow and be their partner in the financial aspects of the business without taking equity ownership, by owning the assets, which are the actual tangible barrels. So, it's kind of coming full circle for me, growing up in Kentucky and being so interested in this stuff at a young age. Now having that apply to my daily life and my day job. And my dad's always said, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's the life that I live right now. And I'm very thankful for that. When you're passionate about something, it really provides you with a great comfort in the long days, the long hours to be able to build, truly build your company. And so aside from that, I've dabbled in real estate investing a little bit. We actually went out and built some warehouses, which, dabbles in the commercial real estate side of things as well. So very well-versed in a variety of investments and financial opportunities. And that was something that was a curiosity I had at a very, very young age. And I found out corporate life wasn't for me. And it is a great learning experience that I had. Taught me a lot of things about running a business. The engineering job that I had was very, very entrepreneurially focused. They really like to let you build your own practice within the business that they had. And it really was a good trial run for me of, what does that look like? So in a nutshell, I definitely have been all over the place. Most people don't necessarily go from finance to engineering to bourbon, but that's my path, and it's something I'm quite proud of.
Morgan, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your incredible journey with us. What fascinates me is just listening to your formative years and how your dad, your family almost groomed you to be the businesswoman that you are. Did you have any other siblings? Did you have brothers? Did you have sisters? What was the drive that got you to be the entrepreneur that you are today?
Yes, I have 3 older siblings, and I learned a lot from them as well. They were a bit older than me, and so I got to see them living their almost adult lives at a really young age. So I was very forward thinking, always waiting to get into their shoes, and I got to learn a lot from their mistakes as well and their experiences. So I definitely think that helped shape me as well.
And while you were studying in college, what did you major in? And how did those studies help you in creating the business that you're involved in today?
I got my degree in civil engineering. And so I definitely think that plays a big role in the ability to build a business. It especially plays a role in the warehousing side of our business. I actually got to design our warehouses while I was working at my engineering job. And it was quite a fun project to work on. I got to apply a lot of skills while tying it to a passion of mine, which was the bourbon industry. So engineering, they teach you to be very analytical, very problem solution oriented. that pipeline. And that's something that I see very, very deeply in my everyday life, particularly when it comes to business.
Now, you mentioned opening your first stock account at just 13. How did those early lessons in investing influence the way that you view money and risk today? And how well did you do with the Apple stocks?
Yeah, I had a really fun time with that. And I would have to give some credit to the broker that I worked with. I mean, he taught me a lot of things and was very patient and kind about it. And, we talked about mutual stocks or mutual funds, traditional stocks, all of the different things. And I became very interested. So I started researching it myself. And as I got older, started trading a little bit more. And the tenants in common account that we had when I was in college was one of the greatest experiences I had, because we would research these companies and basically pitch them to almost a board and say, I think we should invest in this, and here's why. If you get 3 of the 4 people to approve you, you get the thumbs up. So, it's kind of a trial in pitching, a trial in due diligence, and all of the things that you think of when you are interested in running a business.
So what sparked your interest in alternative asset classes like bourbon barrels? And how did that evolve into creating your company?
Bourbon barrels specifically was very heritage based for me. It was an opportunity to invest in my hometown, invest in my home state, and an economic driver for those communities. And it's a fun, also romantic asset, as some people call it. So the opportunity to have a tangible asset that appreciates in value over time, that also has a fun, unique, cool, exclusive aspect to it, was a no-brainer for me. And that exposure at, I think, 21 years old, junior in college, to this opportunity really exposed me to the world of alternative assets. And now I've gotten to experience several others in the space just from conversations I have with other business owners, other people in the investment space. It's been a world of exposure, and there's all kinds of things out there that you can invest in that you would never even think of, like whiskey barrels.
It's amazing. So how do you balance blending your Kentucky heritage with the modern investment strategies in the bourbon industry?
I think it's a delicate balance, because there's a lot of tradition in the space, and tradition is to be respected. But it is a new day and age. There's a lot of technology coming into the space, which is awesome. We're working with some pretty cool projects to bring data into the warehouse, management systems, all of that kind of thing, to make things more efficient, more data-driven, in almost what I would call an antiquated industry. And bringing that into the investment side of things, the focus for me is really, I encourage my investors to be diversified in everything that they invest in. I think it provides you with a safety net. You have to have uncorrelated assets to make sure that your portfolio is balanced. So, if the real estate market is struggling, maybe the whiskey market isn't, maybe the stock market isn't. And having that diversification really helps you find that, middle ground, or that steady line to be able to confidently grow your wealth, build your wealth, and live a comfortable life for you and the generations after you.
So with nearly 100 investors today, what strategies have been most effective in building trust and scaling your company?
Building trust is getting to know what's important, to your investors. What do they want to know? What makes them tick? And you have to be able to build the camaraderie, have a lot of transparency, be very open and honest with the communication. And that has really helped me. I think building the personal relationships with all of my investors has been a phenomenal feat for me as well. These people have also run multi-million-dollar businesses, and they're high net worth individuals with a lot of experience. And I find as much value in having them as investors as I'm sure they do investing with me as well.
Now, your dad told you that if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. How does that advice continue to guide you today?
it guides me every day. And, you know, sometimes I'm sitting at my desk on a Saturday morning, working and jamming to music, and I'm happy to be there because, you know, there are alternatives. I could be, you know, at a job that I don't like with coworkers that are not my friends, and I don't have that experience. I get a lot of flexibility. I really do enjoy what I do every day, and I really think that there's a lot of satisfaction that comes out of life when you enjoy your everyday and you're not just living for the weekends.
So, after realizing that corporate life wasn't for you, what was the biggest mind shift that you had to make to embrace entrepreneurship?
I think it was discipline and consistency, because now there's no structure. I have to build all of the structure. And I'm a very structure driven person. So, you know, there's a lot of discipline that comes with that. If I don't get up at, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm not sitting at my desk, there's no one to yell at me. So I have to yell at myself. And that in itself, it comes very naturally to me, but there, you know, everyone gets fatigued with decisions and routines, and life can just be busy sometimes, and you got to be able to push through that no matter how you're feeling, and keep the business running. So that is a big piece of the puzzle that's very different than corporate life, when you have to show up at the same time every day at the same place. And it was a transition, but it was one I was very ready for and naturally fit into my, you know, personality and lifestyle.
The buck stops with you, right?
Yes.
So, what setbacks or mistakes along your entrepreneurial path taught you the most valuable lessons?
Gosh, we could talk about this for an hour. You know, there's a lot of them, and I think one of them is like truly vetting your opportunities, you know, and figuring out how to value your time, because there's some opportunities that, as much as you want them to be a fit, they're not. And so letting go of those instead of continuing to chase them is a hard thing for me. I'm very much so solution oriented. Let's find a way to fix this. Let's find a way to make this happen. And sometimes the answer is just no. And you got to figure out where that line is, and when to kind of cut your losses to be able to maintain your time and maintain the integrity of your business, and look for those better opportunities. You know, if you've got a slot filled, there's no room for new opportunities to come in. And so making sure that you're aware of where those lines really are for you is something that I have definitely learned how to do. And everyone struggles with it, but it's something I've definitely tried to prioritize.
So, for young people who are curious about investing or starting a business, what would you say is the single most important first step?
Get started. I know that's cheesy and everyone says that, but like, you got to start somewhere, and there is a such thing as being overeducated on a topic. You know, you could know everything about it, but if you haven't gone through it, it's really challenging to get the momentum there. And a perfect example of that for me is, you know, I really wanted to go to business school before I started a business. And one of my goals when I got one of the first contracts I ever got was, if I get this contract, I'm going to go to business school and I'm going to learn how to run this business. And then I had a conversation with myself saying, you know, now you have a business to run. You can't go to business school. You don't have the time for that. So I was thrown into it, and I've learned how to run a business by experience rather than theory. And of course, there's value in both, but I definitely think learned experience is invaluable. Have a good mentor, learn from their mistakes, but just take that first step and get started.
I love it. My last question for you is around your vision and legacy. When people look back on your journey years from now, what do you hope your story inspires in other entrepreneurs?
I hope it inspires them to chase their dreams and go after what they want. And if you kind of get tunnel vision on that and you see your goal at the end of the tunnel, you know, no one can take you away from that. And you got to I think we spoke about this last time, but for me, you know, it's very important for me to be able to build a good financial life for me, because I want the flexibility to be able to be a stay-at-home mom when I have kids. And so I didn't want that to be a game changer for me in my career, in my dating life, and any of that. So I wanted to build that life for myself. And that has been my driving factor in, pushing for this kind of success and this level of flexibility and knowledge and opportunity. So finding something that makes you tick is definitely a great place to start. But I hope that inspires people to chase after what they're looking for and find that for themselves.
I absolutely love it. Morgan, thank you so much for coming online today and sharing your amazing story with our community. I always love talking to you because I've never met anyone so young, so driven, so focused on their goals and their dreams, and you're really doing it and being an example of what's possible. So thank you for coming and sharing with us again.
Of course, I appreciate it. Anytime.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today for the HerStory Online Summit. This is the close for this session. We will be back again at, what's the next session? 11 o'clock. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. But thank you all for tuning in and being a part of this journey. Thanks again, Morgan.
Thank you.
Ciao, everybody.